Hi, Carter.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you? Where are
Good.
you?
I'm in
Where are you?
I'm in Denver. I'm in Colorado and you're not.
I don't like you anymore. Um, and I just left New York. I literally just walked into my house 20 minutes ago. Before that, I was in DC.
And you were up at Climate Week in New York?
I was. And then you were in New York last week, right?
I was in New York at the CG Well conference. Canaccord Genuity ran that conference and they've been focused very much in sort of wellness, which we haven't talked about wellness a lot. I mean, we've talked about food and we've talked about healthcare, but
We've
certainly
talked
wellness
about
is
longevity.
what?
We've talked about longevity a little bit, but not the
Yeah.
wellness piece so much.
So I think people should pay attention to what Canaccord Genuity is doing. So Canaccord Genuity is a Canadian bank, investment bank, that is sort of open, really focused on the wellness market. They focus on many niche markets, but they're focused very much on the wellness market. And so that was topic of conversation. And so you had Noom and companies like that, Throne, the Throne, or no, I'm sorry, yeah, Throne,
Was
a
Throne
lot of
there?
the
Oh,
vitamin company,
Thorn,
not
Thorn,
Throne. I
Thorn,
mean,
Thorn.
Thorn.
We met
Sorry.
with Throne.
Throne
I was like, wait,
was Throne.
Throne. We met with Throne. They're the ones that have
We did.
the poop,
Yeah,
the toilet seat, the magical toilet seat.
they have a magic toilet seat. Anyway, so a lot of the wellness oriented companies were there. And I think everybody should sort of keep an eye on what CG Concord is doing. Because they're very focused on the wellness area. And so there's a lot of overlap there. But you might think of that as vitamin supplements and sort of the gray area between, classic food and, health.
Yeah, but what I find interesting there is when you were sharing with me some of the notes that you took from the different sessions and then some of the conversations that you had at the dinner. There was a VIP dinner on Monday night, I think, that you went to, and I wrote about it. But I wrote about it as if I was there in a future cast way, not actually
Yes,
debriefing
you
on
were
it.
figuratively there, but I was
I
physically
was
there.
figuratively there. Yes, you were physically there. But when you were telling me about your figuratively there experience, I it really made me think about wellness. So I've had a couple of kind of a couple thoughts about that. In fact, that's why I wrote that one piece about when we think about how to end chronic disease and restore human health. That two call it about 2 trillion. It's tricky because some people will say that it's 3 trillion, some people will say it's 2 trillion, 1 trillion because of your point. There's a lot of overlap, and so how do you with healthcare? But what really hit me was so we really are looking at more like a $10 trillion market when you take food and wellness and healthcare and add it all together as that new market opportunity. The restructured market that we talk about through free, leading with reformulation to some extent, and I reformulation of not just food, but I would posit healthcare and then as part of food soil. And what I think is interesting is that I started when I read all that, it was like, wait, you could those same things that we consider wellness in this outlier a bit, right? They kind of have their own little space. That's that almost healthcare layer that you would put into true prevention. So when you reformulate the food, you can use a number of those assets and tools as part of that redesigned effort of prevention. Which I thought was interesting because people a lot of times, to your point, think of wellness as like pills and supplements and gyms and spa trips. So
Well, we're in the macro. Consumers spend 25% of their household income on food and health.
yep,
Um, Consumers are DIY here.
yeah,
Consumers
100%.
are optimizing to health span and lifespan, whether they call it that or not. And there is a food offering that they're given, and there's a health offering that they're given. There may be a wellness offering that they're given, but for the most part, they are pulling from those three levels. They're eating food, they're eating supplements, and then they're taking in pharmaceuticals to achieve something. Now, in each case, there's a doctor with a pharmaceutical or various experts, but at the end of the day, the recipe that's going about inside their body is very much an N of one thing to them.
Exactly.
And if you think about it, like, can you imagine Apple saying, oh, you know what? We'll give you the hardware, but you got to go to these other people to get the software. And you've got to go to these other people I mean, to some degree they
Install
do it
it.
on accessories, but, somebody sat down at Apple and said, we can make more money if we integrate these things. So then I think the lesson I sort of picked up here is we complain the CPGs haven't caught on. Um, I don't know if they ever will, they won't, but, Novo was there and Novo said, hey, we're going to come out with a high bioavailable protein supplement to augment our drug. Because when we think about they're seeing huge drop off in GLP-1 use after 12 months. So they're concerned that the right standard of care, I mean, you can think of it about them being capitalist, but they believe and are correct that the right standard of care is more like 24, 36 months. And so it's sort of peculiar that Novo would move into thinking about a supplement and offering that to the market. You would think that there are many others that are much better connected to the consumer to help educate them. But part of that point is, okay, we're going to give you the GLP-1, and I think they didn't say this, but here is the accessory that you buy with it. And how
Exactly.
you buy it might be cash pay, how you buy it may not. And I think, that's a signal that Novo is maybe saying, forever our drugs have been merchandised through doctors. Doctors don't know how to merchandise. Or another analogy you might use here is what's referred to as customer success. So if you run a software company, you have a customer success team. That's the old support team. And there was a realization that you want customers to be successful using your product. And, there, for example, was one company there who's got a supplement that matches a biologic pharmaceutical for IBS that costs $40,000 a year. Well, they see a huge drop off because of compliance and usage of a $40,000 drug because of some associated complications. And the supplement improves the adjuvant therapy and it improves the functionality. And the startup that had the supplement didn't really have an affiliation with the pharmaceutical, and so they put up a direct-to-consumer website to say, if you're on this drug and you have a challenge, answer the survey, and depending on the survey,
Right.
we can give you this supplement might be beneficial. Well, the data they got out of that, I'm not sure they wanted public, but they got a lot of data. And all of a sudden the pharmaceutical company said, oh, wait a second. You have a supplement that if somebody takes, they keep using our $40,000 drug. And you have all this digital information about our consumers that we don't have the non-conforming digital information. We don't have any digital information like non-compliance. Now, to put a customer success lens on that, if you're Tesla and you're trying to make sure somebody likes the car and they speak well of it, you have a strong customer success program. Well, pharma doesn't really have that. And grocery doesn't have that. And food doesn't have that. There's no genius bar there's no, like, you have trouble with your iPhone, you walk into Apple and there's this attentive Gen Zer who, like, makes your problems go away. I'm a little bit on a rant here, but I at this restaurant at this hotel in Denver for an infrastructure investment conference. And when I looked at the menu for breakfast, it was omelet with special cheese, whatever. But when she came over, she's like, how would you like your coffee? Like, do you want it in any one of these 10 ways? And do you have any allergies we should be aware of? And it just sort of dawned on me. I mean, we always hear those kinds of things, but why, if I go to that, I remember I went and got a ultrasound of my lower abdomen. And ahead of time, they said, don't eat anything. And they forgot to tell me not to drink anything. So I get there and the tech is like, oh, did you have anything to drink? Well, I had some coffee. It's like, well, you weren't supposed to do that. It'll affect the ultrasound. I'm like, that's not what the instructions are. Well, next time you need to know that. It's like, I need to know that?
Yeah. Like, why didn't you tell me?
So, the ultrasound ultimately misdiagnosed something that the Pronovo guys, they diagnosed something that wasn't true. And the Pronovo guys, when they gave us those, MRI
The
scans
scans?
and they
Yeah.
scanned them, they
We
said I
still
didn't
have
have
to,
it.
which we still have to write about.
But so I don't know if I'm going a long rant here. Let's shorten this up. There's a competition. Consumers, there are 320 million consumers in the United States that are DIYing their health span and their lifespan. Food, pharma, healthcare, wellness are all well below the line. They should all be managing the customer success there. There's an opportunity for them to own it. There's economic opportunity for that to happen, and consumers are willing to give up some of that responsibility, and that if you can stop them from having to DIY it, they'll pay you more. You'll get more capture from them. And what I learned last week at the wellness conference is, before that, I thought it was Costco had the chance to do that. I think Novo might have more chance to do that, more so than I
You
thought
think?
before.
You think?
And I think it's open field. It's not like somebody's already there and owns it. To some degree, something like the Kirkland brand owns it. But, Kirkland touches 20 million people maybe, like, who are really brand loyal to Kirkland. I think the ability to own that experience and make it so that health span, lifespan, wellness is not DIY. There's no reason it has to. N of one does not mean it has to be DIY.
No, it doesn't. We talk about personalized medicine at scale. And again, this goes back to the use of the word medicine versus healthcare versus sick care. What we're talking about is more, it's a combination, right? But it's the idea of how do I care for my health through the things that I do more proactively. I'm even growing weary of using the term prevention now because people have defined it as the way that healthcare defines prevention, which is not true prevention.
Say what you think true prevention is.
I would say it's actually caring for your health in a manner that you're not going to acquire disease. And that means you have to look at the inputs into your body and the environment in which you live and the epigenetics, and you have to address those. It's
Maybe we should
really,
set some tiers to prevention, because maybe there's prevention 1.0, 2.0, 3.0.
yeah, that's fair.
So
That's fair.
prevention 3.0 is the system's designed so you don't have to make a decision.
Yep.
No matter what bread you buy, it's not going to affect your health negatively. No matter what meat you buy, it's not going to affect your health negatively.
Yep.
Maybe that's 3.0, and 2.0 is 1.0 is the doctor telling you to eat your peas. 2.0 is,
But you don't need your doctor to tell you to eat your peas.
well, that's why it's 1.0. But
Oh, I see what you're
2.0
saying. Like,
is
we're
2.0
evolving.
is
Okay. That's fair.
2.0 is maybe Noom coaches you.
Okay.
3.0 is the system is, you don't sit there. In the 90s, we called Microsoft Helpline often to fix
Yeah.
challenges with Windows.
Yep.
They had a 1-900 number that you would call. So you could either call some dirty phone company or on a 1-900 number, or you could call them and you get charged. I remember they would charge you like $40 for a support call. When's the last time you ever called anybody for tech support on your
Oh, well,
iPhone?
it's the bane of your existence as well. Like you don't want to call anybody for anything anymore.
Have you ever gotten so flummoxed on an iPhone that you couldn't?
Not on an
And think
iPhone.
about it.
I mean, on other
Well,
devices and other things, yes, but not
but
not an iPhone.
they probably spend $1 billion a year trying to make sure that you don't have to worry about any of that stuff. They
Yeah.
go through user panels, they test things, and if you're Novo or your Costco or your um, General Mills, should you be spending $1 billion a year to make sure the customer experience is healthy for you? Maybe.
Yeah.
Apple's become one of the most valuable companies in the world because of it. I think what I learned in the conference last week at Wells was there are two or three different companies: food, pharma, and I consider pharma separate from healthcare. Um, pharma's a form of supplement. You just have an RX attached to it. You got healthcare. You got a few different people that can vie for this market. The other twist I had on a call with someone today is we were bemoaning that the CPGs haven't caught on. And I'm reminded by, I did all my academic work at MIT a bit more around adoption. What does it take to adopt? There's a concept in physics called a Wheatstone bridge or impedance matching. So you need to transmit on the right frequency and you need to receive on the right frequency.
Oh,
Sometimes you
interesting.
don't see technology adoption because you're not on the same frequency.
Interesting. Yeah.
Um, Now we covered this with the KDD example.
Which, by the way, I'm
If
talking to him this afternoon.
KDD,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So we have a whole bunch of individual ingredients companies in our portfolio calling line managers and CPGs saying you should use this fiber or this sugar. And those line managers are trying to make a decision to use your sugar or another sugar. And, one of the variables is how much volume are we doing? What's the price going to be? And it's a pull and skew. Well, we've been talking to some of our ingredients friends and we said, well, if you're the CEO of General Mills, what do you want to tell the street? And if you're the CEO of General Mills, you want to say, we have 400 SKUs. We've read Lustig's book. We've looked at the KDD study and we're going to migrate. We're going to launch like they did with Lean Six Sigma. We're going to launch a reformulation exercise. And we're going to reformulate 100 SKUs in the next 6 months, and I'm going to report to it in my 10Q. So now central procurement says, oh, we need a suite of sweets, we need a suite of fibers, we need a suite of amino acids, we need a suite of natural coloring, we need a suite of things that our product teams can use. And then McKinsey and Bain and all those people show up with the individual product teams and start walking them through just like they did Design for Manufacturing or Lean Six Sigma, and they run an exercise that says, here's the General Mills framework for reformulating. We've got standard Excel model, and so central procurement's worried about the fact that they're going to use tagatose or allulose or mannose or soluble fiber or some cool new amino acid from Engimoto or whatever. and they just roll through. Well, so the point there is not that the CPGs don't get it. Nobody's transmitting that frequency. No startup is going to walk in and say to the C-suite, what you need to do is what I just said.
Yeah.
So the startups can't get the traction, and the CPGs are stuck in a corner being accused of being blind to GLP-1. And really, there's no mediator there standing up and saying, and maybe that's what we should, maybe from we as a venture investor, maybe that's what we should be doing. Well, that's what we're doing. I've sat down with one of the ingredients companies and with, one of the core founders from, Patagonia Provisions, to sort of say, how can we have that C-level conversation? But I think
Exactly.
we've got to start thinking about things to take the friction out of the decision process.
Agreed. We need
Same
to
with
follow
pharma,
up.
and same with pharma, and same with healthcare.
Exactly. Which, by the way, okay, so I'm going to transition this for a second. We'll save Climate Week and that discussion for another block. But the other one I want to transition to is I went to a dinner in DC Monday night, and it was full on healthcare.
Well, you were in
And
DC and then New York?
yeah, did you not know this?
I didn't know that that's what you did. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, I went into DC on Monday for this dinner, and so had a CMS was at the dinner, number of other key CMS, HHS, right? So on the policy side, leaders there, and then there were a number of C-suites and key leaders and other, probably more tech. I would call it a very sort of tech forward, health tech forward type of event. Although, there were folks that were involved with the kind of maybe the more association side of, like, for example, accountable care organizations, Medicaid managed care, those that, but more from probably a DC lobbying, perhaps, trade association kind of thing. But I have to tell you, like, I'm having a hard time being in that room anymore. I need to be in that room, but I am growing exceedingly impatient with that room, and the sort of this just myopic thinking. And I find that on the food side, the folks making decisions on the food side are a lot more willing and interested and curious about how to meet consumer demand about health, right? They may be scared and, whatever, unsure, worried about maybe following something that's not a true trend, but they're there, right? They're at the conversation, or they're willing to engage. And I just find on the healthcare side, we just have our heads so buried that we literally, it's like, well, healthcare is an empire and we will continue to do what we do. And we don't care about food. That's for somebody else to solve. We should take soda away from people with SNAP because that's what's going to fix it. We should take corn syrup out of things, and we should call it a day. And, people don't care. People won't try. And then let's just go back to the conversation of, how to build the next shiny object that makes something more efficient, but nobody's talking about how to reverse disease, and I just am really fed up with it. And I flew up there for
Well,
this
is
event.
there, um, just like with CPG, that it might be senior leadership doesn't know how to communicate with product managers because they're in a point of transition.
But
They're
well,
they're
okay.
running a business. So is there a
Well,
way to have that conversation to say something needs to shift?
well, but that's the thing, Carter. They, I don't think anybody thinks that it needs to shift. They think consumers are perfectly fine consuming the healthcare the way they do, and they'll just keep using it that way. They don't see any threat or any worry that the market, that there's a chasm or a crack or anything. I mean, seriously. Um, the GLP-1 thing, people just compare it to bariatric surgery, and they're like, it's a blip on the radar. It's a trend. It'll go away. And I just am, I don't know.
So they
Just
see it as an intervention. They don't
yeah,
see it as,
and
because
correct. And I mean, food as medicine is cool, but it's mainly for to address food insecurity. It's a social determinant of health. Um, there are some people that engage in the conversation more with intellectual curiosity about it, but not at a. And then there are a number of people that on a passion level, at a personal level, are like, oh yes, I want to see our food system change, and that would be wonderful. But it's not. It's completely disintermediated from healthcare from an industry perspective
yeah.
in their minds, right?
Well, this is
Um,
why I think that an issue with healthcare is it doesn't have a non-human delivery model that's very good. Where pharma doesn't, notionally, pharma already delivers its good without a human intervention.
yeah,
Um, so they're a little bit better to make that shift.
yeah. But it was just a really interesting. It was just I had an interesting reaction. Like my reaction in
Visceral
those.
reaction to,
Yeah, but
well, we have to,
we had a very lively debate because the conversation at our table was a really cool format that was used, but we ended up kind of in this rabbit hole that ended us in this food is health, food is medicine type of conversation,
well,
and we did get into a
um,
very heated conversation about it,
it
and
is,
I felt
I
like
don't know if
that
I've
person in
lost
the
you here.
room in like the classroom that answers everything.
So we do need to be sure that we break healthcare into two chunks,
Yes,
chronic and acute,
yes.
because it's very easy for people to think you're picking on
Well,
healthcare, and the acute function has
yes,
its own distinct issue. And acute being, I've got cancer or I've got
yes, yes,
um, sickle cell anemia, or the
yes,
chronic
yes.
mostly being type 2 diabetes. Um,
Hypertension. It's anything related to metabolic syndrome.
yeah, inflammatory markers. I think and then you have sort of the Brian Johnson part of the world that is taking, um, that's working a little bit against metabolic health from the standpoint of, oh, you need to focus about this neuroprotective thing for your brain for this reason. And it sounds cool to be worried about that, but you're still ignoring the fact that, look, if you don't have the endocrine upset, metabolic upset, you conquer 70% of what's going to cause you to get
But
Alzheimer's.
this isn't this isn't a common agreed upon platform that you've just set within the healthcare industry.
Well, and so I think they can go long acute, and they need to think that they've got to decide for chronic. Um, are they the 5-star restaurant everyone wants to go to? Or a 3-star Michelin?
Yeah.
They've got to decide. I think what they've got to think more about is customer success. Customers in a DIY mode, if you can guide them correctly.
Yes.
And guiding them does not mean, let me answer
Yeah.
these 50 HIPAA questions first.
Exactly. Exactly.
Sign the same form 500 times.
Exactly.
I've got to remember
But
to mark with a black magic marker which limb we have to cut off.
yeah. Well, but you
So,
just listed a bunch of regulatory friction that is a burden. So, all right, we have to call this one.
okay, good to catch up.
Yeah, good to catch up.